Just a word about the saint that we celebrate today and the rite associated with him, the blessing of the throats. San Blas, or Saint Blaise, was a martyr from the 4th century, probably the last persecutions, known as the Great Persecution of the beginning of the 300s, around that time. He probably lived somewhere in Turkey, what's today Cappadocia, which is bordering with Armenia and even going as far as Iraq, around there. And he was known to be a very holy man, a hermit, and known for curing. Maybe he was a physician at the same time. He seemed to have been some sort of doctor because he was renowned for healing people who came with illnesses of the throat. Now, it's very vague. Illnesses of the throat, yeah, if you get a sore throat, I guess you get a cold. But, something gets stuck in your throat or you get a pain in your throat. Well, they took it to him, and apparently he knew how to fix that. And so on several occasions, he is credited for saving people that were choking on something or to get something stuck in his throat, and he's able to pull it out or figure out a way to get it out. He was martyred as a bishop, as he was made a bishop in the area that he was with, and during the persecutions was rounded up. And as the persecutions always did, they always started with a renunciation of faith. You know, we say the persecutions weren't a summary execution of every Christian. No, there was phases of them. And the Romans were kind of reluctant to go all the way to the final thing, which was, execution. And so they would always elicit first, for you to renounce your faith and get out of it as quick as possible. And a little torture might help you do that in order to get there. When one would not change or would not fold under any circumstance, and after a lot of trying, then capital punishment was applied. And so it was with St. Blaise, who, being identified as a bishop, a leader of the Christian community, was brought in, asked and invited to renounce his faith, which he did not. He was tortured, and we hear a little bit about those tortures, that he was raked over with an iron comb until his skin came off, and he still did not bend. On his way towards his execution, it was said that a child was brought to him that had a fishbone stuck in his throat, and he did his work. He got that bone out. And even then, the magistrate that witnessed this wasn't moved enough and sent him to his death. But he still remembered for that. Often the paintings show him with the 2 candlesticks, blessing people on the throat with them, and probably following the Eastern way of blessing, which they do with 2 candlesticks, and they trace the form of the cross on you. The cool thing is that those candlesticks are ablaze, they're on fire. And sometimes it shows that you receive the blessing on the fire. And if you've ever had it before, what the paintings don't show is the wax dripping off the side of it and getting all over your clothes, or your hair catching on fire because the flame is right there. And so when I do this, they're like, don't you have to turn on the candles? Well, are you prepared for the consequences? No. So I will not turn on the candles for the blessing. But we'll have the blessing at the end of the Mass, after before we sing El Himno, but after the blessing, we can come up just so we do communion, and we'll do the blessing. And the blessing has very pertinent words for us today. It says, through the intercession of St. Blaise, bishop and martyr, may God preserve you from every illness of the throat and every disease. I think we need that today. Very much so. It's the first symptom of the COVID, the throat. And so I think it's a very powerful prayer and blessing to have today. And so we'll give it individually to everyone if you want to come up, and we'll give that blessing at the end of Mass. However, the first reading is also very interesting because it brings us another point that maybe kind of falls out of favor, falls out of fashion. It's a word, discipline. La disciplina. You have also forgotten the exhortation addressed to you as children. My son, do not disdain the discipline of the Lord, or lose heart when you are reproved by him. Endure your trials as a discipline. God treats you as sons. So often now we lose the discipline. We don't like that word, and we try to work around it. In fact, I got into a debate when I was in theology with another young religious who said, it's impossible for God to discipline us because God will never, ever want to hurt or punish anyone. It's like, I don't think we got a different concept of father in here. And he was so bent on the mercy of God and the kindness of God that he's incapable of disciplining, and so he would never do that to anyone. And it's like, no, I think anyone who has any sense of fatherhood knows that discipline is necessary. You don't do it out of spite. You don't do it for revenge or out of pleasure. You do it out of love. And I think all the fathers here can attest to that. You've had to discipline your sons at one point. You have to discipline your children. And maybe it wasn't such a pleasing thing to do, but nevertheless is a good thing to do. We discipline, or we submit ourselves to discipline for a greater good. And it's in the word itself. Go back to the Latin, disciplina, and disciple, which is discepolo, that's in Italian. I'm trying to think. Discipulus. Discipulus in Latin and disciplina. It's the same root. The disciple must be disciplined. And what is discipline? It's literally what keeps us in line with learning or a teaching. And so the disciple, to be a real disciple, submits himself to a discipline. Why? To bring himself into line with the teaching, whatever his teacher brings him to. It's constantly bringing into line. Enderecerse really is what the word disciplina means in Latin. Enderecerse. Go back into line again. And that's exactly what we do in our discipline. We bring ourselves back into the line that we know is right. We try to follow that line. Sometimes it's very narrow, but we try to follow it as close as we can. Endure your trials as discipline. A lot of times when you might have known that before I was considering my vocation, I was considering vocation into the military. I wanted to, ever since I was small, enter in the Navy, and I wanted to fly too. And I wasn't really good at math. That was a problem. And when I looked at Naval Academy and all that, you need to have good math score, especially if you wanted to go into aviation. You needed to be good at math. And I didn't see the point. I didn't see the relationship. Actually, I had already started flying. I learned to fly a plane before I drove a car. And I didn't see the point because I was able to move and make a lot of progress, taking off, landing, navigation without being a wizard at math. When my dad brought me back into the line, he said, well, you need to make a lot of calculations as a pilot in your head at the moment. Now the computer does it all for you. But nevertheless, you still should know how to do these things. And that kind of got me back in line. Well, then I applied myself more to math. And I never actually did better in math when I was in high school than when I was preparing that application for the Naval Academy. I saw it, the end of it, the good it was, and I submitted myself to study more, something I hated. Still don't like it. Tried to make sense and apply myself more to something that I didn't see the sense to. Well, it was a trial, but it was a discipline for a greater good. It was a training, as it says right here in the letter. And so as we enter a very undisciplined world, undisciplined times, then we lose our discipline, and it's made easy to let it go. I'm very happy that there was a good group outside doing the rosary. Estamos recobrando una disciplina. And a lot of times we see, as we go on, we've lost the discipline. We try to keep the discipline of always saludando al Señor cuando entramos y saludarlo y despedirnos a la salida. Un rosario antes de la guardia. O sea, son disciplinas, cosas de disciplina de la antigüedad que se nos va aflojando a veces con el tiempo. But we need to do it because it helps bring us in line. And what was 3 guys last week, 4 guys, now it was 10 today, and I'm sure it's going to get greater and greater. What was just 1 guy inside the chapel before, now becomes 4, becomes 6 later on. In numbers, we can keep the discipline and find the good in it. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.